reject bin. It's the Raggy Dolls,
Raggy Dolls,
Raggy Dolls,
Raggy Dolls,
dolls like you and me. Raggy Dolls,
Raggy Dolls,
Raggy Dolls,
Raggy Dolls,
made him perfectly. So if you got a bump on your nose or lumps on your toes, do not despair. Be like the Raggy Dolls and say I just don't care. 'Cause Raggy Dolls,
Raggy Dolls,
Raggy Dolls,
Raggy
are
Dolls,
happy just to be Raggy Dolls, Raggy Dolls, dolls like you and me.
One morning, Dotty was busy with the vacuum cleaner.
It's time this bin had a really good clean,
She puffed. The others had collected all their rubbish in a sack and were taking it to the town dump. When they got there, the Raggy Dolls were amazed to see how many things people threw away.
Look, said Back to Front. Do you see what I see?
He pointed to a pile of old junk. 2 legs were sticking out of the top. They belonged to a doll. Someone had knitted her a long time ago out of knobbly white wool. She had hardly any hair left and only one eye, which was a chipped boot button.
Hello, doll,
said Back to Front kindly. But the doll didn't answer. She just lay on her back, staring up at the sky with her boot button eye. She didn't seem to be seeing anything at all.
Raggy Dolls to the rescue,
Crackled Hi-Fi.
Let's take her home.
What a splendid idea,
Agreed Princess.
I hope Dotty thinks so.
Thought Sad Sack, eyeing the doll's grubby dress. Back to Front, Hi-Fi and Sad Sack carried her between them. Claude said he'd better keep his hands clean for cooking. The doll looked as if she could do with a square meal.
Tell us about yourself.
Said Dotty.
I belonged to a girl once.
She said at last, when she was warm and comfortable in the reject bin.
I had long fair hair and dozens of different dresses. How did you get on that rubbish tip?
Asked Lucy, who was always afraid something like that might happen to her.
I've forgotten,
Said the doll.
I forget everything nasty and only remember the nice things.
Back to Front stared at the doll. He was thinking.
There's lots of bits and pieces in Mr. Grimes' workshop. I don't suppose it would be all that difficult to put her right. Would you like to be mended?
He asked presently. Princess found some canvas and glue, and soon she was making a curly red wig. The knitted doll watched, but she couldn't see very well.
Boot button highs are always coming adrift,
Said Princess kindly.
Children pull them off and lose them. She can't have painted eyes, though, can she?
Said Lucy.
Being made of knitting, I mean. What about embroidered eyes?
Suggested Hi-Fi. We have here some blue silk, said Claude, rummaging in a basket. C'est perfect, no? Back to Front was eyeing her rags. How about a new dress? He suggested.
Oh, a new dress would be very nice,
Said the doll.
Could it be made of knitting, do you think?
Knitting it is, said Back to Front. No problem. Princess found a pair of knitting needles, and Claude chose some blue wool. To match those beautiful eyes, he said with a wink. The needles were so long that everyone had to help. In no time, the rows of stitching grew into a dress. It fitted perfectly.
How kind you all are,
Sighed the doll.
I wish I had a name.
No problem. We'll think of one in a jiffy, said Back to Front. But it proved difficult finding the right name.
How about going away by yourselves to think?
Suggested Hi-Fi.
I always get my best ideas when I'm on my own.
That's the way inspiration comes, agreed Princess. Lucy skipped and made up a rhyme.
Sarah, Mary, Rosie, Jane, Daphne, Nancy, Lily, Marlene. Sarah, Mary, Rosie, Jane, Daphne...
Claude thought of beautiful French names like François and Dominique. Hi-Fi listened to people sending messages to each other all over the world.
sir. Is that you, Carlotta? No, this is Titania Bolkowski speaking. Goodbye for me.
But none of those names would do. Princess thought of royal names like Elizabeth and Han and Alexandra. Back to Front sat in Mr. Grimes' garden and thought of girls' names that sounded like flowers. Poppy and Marigold, Daisy and May. Dotty looked through the address book in Mr. Grimes' office. It had the names of clients like Mrs. Ermintrude Arbuthnot and Angelica Hubble. Far too grand for a knitted doll, thought Dotty. Sadsack thought and scratched his head and frowned and shut his eyes. But he couldn't think of any names except Dotty and Lucy and Princess.
Time's up,
called Dotty. The Raggy Dolls went back to the reject bin to compare notes. But when they looked inside, their friend wasn't there anymore. She had vanished. Where can she have gone? Said Dotty. I can't understand it, said Back to Front. I thought she liked being with us.
Perhaps she's been kidnapped,
whispered Lucy.
I'm being kidnapped,
thought the knitted doll. Someone had wrapped her up and was putting her in a box tied with a pink ribbon.
I don't know why I'm being put in this dark box,
thought the knitted doll.
It's one of those nasty things I shall have to forget.
The Raggy Dolls felt sad for the rest of the morning. At lunchtime, Hi-Fi listened to local radio.
Why not come on down to the spring fair? Bring the family, fun for all. This afternoon on the big field.
The newsreader said this year's spring fair is being held in the big field, he reported. This very afternoon.
Who cares? Said Sadsack. I don't think I'll go, said Back to Front.
I won't either,
said Princess. Lucy and Claude agreed. They were all worrying about their lost friend. What could have happened to her?
Oh, come on, said Dotty. Going to the fair might buck us all up.
I doubt it, said Sadsack. But Dotty won. After lunch, they all set off for the big field. There were people everywhere. A brass band was playing and a huge old traction engine was giving rides to children.
Oh, I fancy a go on that,
said Lucy.
So do I,
crackled Hi-Fi. They watched the traction engine go round and round the field. At 3 o'clock, there was going to be a raffle. Mr. Grimes was in charge. Number 452.
Look,
said Lucy.
There's a girl over there waving her ticket in the air. Do you think she's got the winning number?
Very likely, said Dotty. Well spotted. Mr. Grimes gave the girl a box tied with a pink ribbon, which she opened immediately. Well, I never, exclaimed Back to Front. Goodness! Oh! Look! Cried all the Raggy Dolls. Because when the girl lifted out her prize, the Raggy Dolls could see that it was their lost friend, the knitted doll. You'll have to give her a name now, said Mr. Grimes, patting the girl's head.
I'm going to call her Jack Beebe,
said the girl.
Jack Beebe? That's my name,
cried the driver of the traction engine.
That's right,
said the girl.
I'm going to call her Jack Beebe after you.
Then she climbed up beside him and they started off on a victory drive around the big field.
'Cause Raggy Dolls, Raggy Dolls are happy just to be Raggy Dolls, dolls like you and me.
Every morning at 8 o'clock, the Raggy Dolls heard this sound. It was the hooter on Mr. Grimes' toy factory, calling people to work. But for a whole week, the hooter didn't blow and no one came to work. The main gates were padlocked, and Mr. Grimes slipped in through a side door and sat in his office all alone, from morning to night. The Raggy Dolls could hear him muttering to himself.
I don't know. If it goes on like this, we'll have to close for good.
What does he mean, close?
Whispered Lucy. Shut down! Stop making toys! Explained Dotty grimly.
But what will happen to us?
It'll be out of the reject bin and into the dustbin, said Sad Sack. And that will be that.
Lucy began to tremble, so Claude cooked breakfast, which made them all feel better.
I suppose we might as well eat while we can,
said Sad Sack. He had 12 sausages, 4 cups of tea, and a whole loaf of bread, which made his tummy look even bigger than usual.
You won't fit into a dustbin,
said Back to Front.
That's the idea,
agreed Sad Sack. Later, when Mr. Grimes had gone home, the Raggy Dolls met in his office to see if they could discover anything useful. There were lots of opened letters on his desk.
This one says order cancelled,
read Hi-Fi.
So does this one,
said Back to Front.
This one says we don't want any more old stock. We want new ideas for the spring. Well, I'm going jogging,
said Princess.
Fresh hair and exercise always helps when you're feeling upset.
Good thinking, agreed Dotty.
Count us in,
said Back to Front, Hi-Fi, Claude and Lucy.
Count me out,
said Sad Sack. It was one of those bright spring mornings when the hedges are full of twittering birds. The Raggy Dolls jogged round and round the duck pond. Mother Duck had just hatched a new batch of ducklings. She was looking very pleased with herself.
The years passed ever so quickly,
said Lucy.
Do you remember the ducklings we had last spring?
Yeah, one of them got lost and thought Sad Sack was its mother,
chuckled Back to Front.
And Sad Sack thought it was a monster,
laughed Hi-Fi. On their way home, none of them noticed that a duckling was following them. Sad Sack was catching up on sleep. He didn't like soap and water very much, but the basin in Mr. Grimes's washroom was just the right shape for him. He was very comfortable. Sad Sack woke with a start. The noise came again, louder. At first he thought it was the plumbing. Then he realized it came from the other side of the washroom window. What on earth could it be? The Raggy Dolls were almost home.
Oh, phew! Well done, chaps,
gasped Dotty.
I don't know whether I'm coming or going,
groaned Back to Front.
You never do,
giggled Lucy.
Phew, I am, how you say, in done,
exclaimed Claude.
You mean done in,
sputtered Hi-Fi.
So am I.
Oh, look,
cried Princess.
There's Sad Sack. Whatever's he up to?
Kitty, kitty, kitty,
called Sad Sack nervously. He had a mop in one hand, and he was trying to reach the gutter above without falling out of the window.
Don't be frightened, kitty,
called Sad Sack, trying not to be frightened himself. The kitten was a long way up, and the ground was a long way down.
Hello, Sad Sack,
called the Raggy Dolls.
What do you think you're doing?
There's a kitten stuck up here, and I'm rescuing it,
explained Sad Sack.
Hang on, I'll come and help,
called Back to Front.
No problem.
Shall I call the RSPCA?
asked Hi-Fi.
No need. Look. Oh, my. Isn't he clever?
gasped Lucy, because Back to Front had managed to persuade the kitten onto the end of the mop. Now he was pulling it down to safety. It seemed very large to the Raggy Dolls.
However did he get up there?
Asked Princess. Must have climbed the drain pipe, said Back to Front. Kitten didn't stop meowing. Claude decided it was thirsty, so he fetched some of Mr. Grimes's coffee milk from the fridge.
Give it some more,
suggested Hi-Fi.
Impossible. There is no more, said Claude. It is finished.
Oh dear,
said Lucy.
watch out!
Cried Princess as the kitten pounced on Lucy's head and began to play cat and mouse.
It's a very mischievous kitten, isn't it?
Said Lucy nervously.
Watch out!
Warned Princess again. The kitten jumped from one Raggy Doll to another.
Zut alors, I have had enough of this, said Claude. Au revoir, mes amis.
There's no need to say goodbye. We're all coming, said Dotty. So when the kitten's back was turned, the Raggy Dolls dashed out and shut the door behind them.
I should never have gone into Mr. Grimes's washroom. Everything I do goes wrong,
said Sad Sack. You'd be upset if things went right, said Back to Front kindly.
I wonder if that's true,
thought Sad Sack. That night, Mr. Grimes couldn't sleep for worrying about his factory.
I shall go back to the office, he thought, and try out some more ideas.
He was just letting himself into the side door when he heard a strange noise. It was the duckling. He had almost stepped on it in the dark.
Silly little blighter,
said Mr. Grimes kindly.
you're lost, aren't you? Mother Duck'll be missing you. I'll take you back to the pond. In you go,
said Mr. Grimes. He watched the duckling join its brothers and sisters, and suddenly he had an idea. A wonderful idea. Mr. Grimes spent all night sketching in his office. Next morning, when he went to his washroom, Mr. Grimes was surprised to find a kitten asleep in the sink. It opened two green eyes and began to purr, and as it purred, a bubble floated out of its mouth.
By gum, explained Mr. Grimes. You must have been hungry, Puss. You've been eating my soap.
And then Mr. Grimes had another, even more wonderful idea. A week later, the Raggy Dolls woke up again to the sound of the factory hooter. The workers came back, and soon all the machines were clattering away, busier than ever.
Guess what?
Crackled Hi-Fi, who had been to see what was happening.
Mr. Grimes has invented the two new spring toys. One's a family of ducklings for the bath, and the other's a kitten that blows bubbles.
What absolutely stunning ideas,
exclaimed Princess.
The factory is saved. Toys like that will sell like hotcakes,
said Dotty.
I do like it sometimes when things go right,
said Sad Sack.
It's not much of a life when you're just a pretty face. Just to be whoever you are is no disgrace. Look around and you will find people of every kind, like the Raggy Dolls,
Raggy Dolls,
Raggy Dolls,
Raggy Dolls,
dolls like you and me. Raggy Dolls,
Raggy Dolls,
Raggy Dolls,
Raggy Dolls,
made him perfectly. So if you're not at ease with your knobbly knees and your fingers are all thumbs, stand on your two left feet and join our Raggy Doll chums. 'Cause Raggy Dolls,
Raggy Dolls,
Raggy Dolls
Raggy
are
Dolls,
happy just to be Raggy Dolls, Raggy Dolls, dolls like you.